Klaus Schwab wants to microchip your children, force you to eat cockroaches, take your house and make you own nothing, and you will be happy. The New World Order will replace your national government with a deep state cabal of billionaires, and the Great Reset is inevitable and you will comply. Today, I'll address all of these memes by debunking them and explaining why some of these ideas are actually potentially good for humanity. Hey Slavic Vikings, and I'm currently a soldier in a European army, and I'm a radical centrist who has lived in Poland and Ireland for most of my life. And I want Europe to become a proper federal superpower, and I think it's closer than we think. But in short, I'm a good guy liberal who wants a strong Europe. I just want to make my biases clear before moving on to this controversial topic. I know I will get a bunch of hate in the comments since people really hate the World Economic Forum, and to an extent I get it, since it's the most clear example of elitist control in late-stage capitalism. And it's easy to hate them because they honestly look hella sus and their weird meetings in Davos are very suspicious. Before we talk about Klaus Schwab, we need to understand the phrase New World Order, because it is obviously way older than the memes or a Hoi 4 mod. September 11th, 1990, the President of the United States, George W. Bush, gave a speech to a joint session in Congress, and during that time, Iraq had just invaded Kuwait. Back then, the First Cold War was ending, the Soviet Union was crumbling, and back then, Bush, the Republican president, he stood up and said,
"A new world order can emerge, a new era."
He meant that the UN can finally work properly and the countries can cooperate in globalism instead of fighting proxy wars. But the phrase, the New World Order, was a short, evocative, and slightly ominous sounding phrase. So of course, by the mid-1990s, it has become a centerpiece for many conspiracy theories in the early internet forums. The New World Order became a secret plan for one world government, shadowy global globalist elites, the Antichrist, FEMA concentration camps, black helicopters, and of course, the Jews. There is no conspiracy theory that is not connected to the Jews. And the New World Order and globalism in general online, often either directly or through implication, makes the connection to the world Zionist Jewish plot or whatever. However, going back to Klaus Schwab is actually a good guy Catholic, and he is an old 87-year-old German economist and an engineer who founded the World Economic Forum in 1971 and ran it for about 50 years until he resigned in 2025. And he has a doctorate in engineering, a doctorate in economics, and a master's degree from Harvard, so definitely an elitist, you could say. So at first glance, it may be confusing why there are so many memes and Hoi 4 mods about him being an evil world dictator. In my eyes, he is obviously not some supervillain, he is simply a conference organizer with unusually strong opinions about global supply chains. And honestly, he is surprisingly very based, but I'm gonna touch on that later. But first of all, why do these memes exist? Honestly, I think a genuine huge part of it is because he genuinely looks like a ghoul with no soul. His eyes look like he has no soul. And secondly, and more importantly, it's caused by the weird secrecy around the World Economic Forum, because this organization that he built has around 800 employees and it is headquartered in Geneva. And its most famous product is the annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland, where every January 3,000 of the world's most powerful people and journalists gather in the Swiss mountain resort to have panel discussions about climate change and geopolitics. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's just a networking event for the top 0.0001%. But the conspiracy theory version of Davos is that it's a secret meeting where the world's rulers decide what will happen to the rest of us. But I genuinely don't think there's some weird conspiracy around this. And when I talk to my friends, many of them believe in so many conspiracy theories, ideas very similar to Davos's New World Order or the Illuminati and stuff. A lot of people seem to want to believe that there is a small group of people controlling civilization. However, I dismiss these ideas of a secret deep state group because they simply don't make sense to me. I believe we're all just improvising life and society in general, and in a way, I truly believe that subconsciously, this fact is more unsettling than a secret group controlling everything. Many of my friends, I think, subconsciously want to believe that someone is in control, but the reality is that nobody is. This lack of control makes people uncomfortable, so geopolitically they turn into deep state conspiracies and spirituality and religion. People don't like the idea that our existence is largely the result of randomness, so people create literal or spiritual explanations sometimes in the form of conspiracy theories or doctrine to impose an overarching structure on something that doesn't actually have one. But moving back, let me go through the main New World Order meme claims one by one. First of all, the claim that they want a world government. And this comes from the fact that Schwab actually advocates for stronger globalist cooperation between existing governments and civil society on shared problems like climate change, pandemics, and AI governance. So literally extremely based. Only through cooperation we can flourish in peace and prosperity, and that's why I agree with Schwab on a lot of things. And the New World Order, Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist, heard global cooperation and extrapolated that to global control. And these are different things in the same way that European countries cooperating on trade is not the same as the Illuminati controlling Brussels. But Schwab has never said anything about a world government. But you know who has? Me. I want an actual world government, and I'm open about this. Eventually, in 1,000 years, I want a loose confederation of the entire world so we can stop killing each other and focus on the goal of colonizing space. Schwab is just another boring centrist. I, on the other hand, am an actual radical centrist the conspiracy theories talked about. I guess they're just lucky that I don't have actual power and I'm poor. But moving on to a more goofy meme from the World Economic Forum, and that being, "You will eat the bugs." In short, the meme is about the fact that the New World Order will force society to eat bugs, kinda like in Snowpiercer, but the fact is that nobody will force you to eat insects, and nobody has ever mentioned this. They did talk about introducing insects to Western diets multiple times directly, and this is because they launched an entire dialogue series called Meat the Future, which was published to show that there's alternatives to proteins. And Oxford University made many promotional videos about eating insects, and they also ran food innovation competitions specifically calling for diverse protein sources. And the truth is that the WEF genuinely promoted this, and that's why the meme has some truth to it, but what the meme does get wrong is the forcing part. Nobody is forcing you to eat insects. It is simply research and advocacy, but not policy. And all the Klaus Schwab memes, for some reason, imply authoritarianism and 1984 Snowpiercer style compliance. However, I genuinely think that eating insects might be a good idea. And I promote it to even a higher extent than Klaus Schwab. The current global animal agriculture industry is genuinely, objectively, and embarrassingly extremely inefficient. Livestock accounts for between 14.5 and nearly 20% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. Cattle alone produces 2/3 of that amount through methane. 75% of all agricultural land on Earth is used for animal production. And in return for 75%, it provides 18% of global calories. The feed conversion ratio of beef is 7:1. However, I do love meat, mostly because it is high in protein. However, insect farming produces 80 times less methane than beef for the same or better equivalent protein. Crickets are roughly 65% protein by dry weight. Beef is only 26%. Insects also provide the complete amino acid profile of all the essential amino acids that your body can't produce itself, which is exactly why plant-based protein falls short and why I don't eat it. Meat protein is simply higher quality and more efficient and better, and therefore insects might be the solution instead of plant-based protein. And let's not forget that insects being weird to eat is mostly just a Western phenomenon. Like, if you look at Snowpiercer's bug bars, I would genuinely eat them. They look kind of tasty. Like, just look at those delicious, moist cockroach protein bars from the tail section. Chop those up into some smaller slop blocks, throw them in a deep fryer, and throw some ketchup on there, and we have some delicious and nutritious buggy Schwabbies. And you guys in the comments will attack me for being disgusting for wanting my Schwab bars, but you happily gobble up McDonald's chicken nuggies, and is there really that much of a difference? I'm just saying. And next up, let's move on to the meme of you will own nothing and be happy. And this one is serious because I've noticed through talking to my Discord that phrases like this make people extremely angry. The phrase did not come from Klaus Schwab, however. It came from a 2016 article on the WEF website written by a Danish member of parliament named Ida Auken, and she was describing a speculative future city in which people don't own cars or appliances but access everything through shared services. So basically a futuristic communist technocracy where you will use the communal toothbrush and like it. However, she later clarified that this was simply meant to provoke a debate and it was not supposed to be some utopian blueprint. The World Economic Forum made a video summarizing this, and a 4chan post screenshotted a frame from the video and added New World Order 2030 under it, and it went viral. And the WEF later clarified that they had no stated goal to eliminate private property. Epictetus, who was a literal slave and had nothing, wrote that true freedom comes from virtue and reason, not possessions. The Stoic argument is that the things you own do not make you happy. It's your mentality and virtue that makes you happy. So in a weird, half ironic, half philosophical way, the memed version of Klaus Schwab's ideology brings up something very real, because what you own is ultimately outside of your control. I'm not saying that you should be happy to have your house taken away and all your possessions and all that. I am saying that your house should not be your source of happiness in the first place. And if you disagree with this, I would love to hear your perspective in the comments. Now we gotta talk a bit about the fourth industrial revolution. And here Schwab's argument is that we are in a new technological era, with AI, robotics, biotechnology changing genetics, where physical, digital, and biological worlds are merging together in a way that is unprecedented in pace and scope. Previous industrial revolutions took generations to unfold. However, this one is exponentially speeding up and is happening in just years. And all of this is happening way faster than our political and institutional systems can keep up. And Klaus Schwab's organization simply focuses a lot on how to manage this. And this is objectively a virtuous cause. Schwab's argument here is that companies should not only serve their shareholders, but all stakeholders, that being employees, customers, and communities as well. This directly contrasts with the pure shareholder capitalism American mentality is known for, where the only metric is GDP profit and everything else is someone else's problem. The idea that corporations have obligations beyond quarterly profit is not radical. It is what makes Europe different from America. This is all good and dandy, but let's move on to something that sounds a little bit more scary, and that being the Great Reset. And this was launched by the WEF in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. And the core idea of this was that the global economic crisis during COVID was also a moment of opportunity to rebuild it in a way that's more sustainable and more equitable. So instead of just going back to normal, we could use this opportunity and rethink recovery as a means to achieve something greater rather than just doing the exact same thing that we did before. However, I think the World Economic Forum, chose way too scary of a name for this. The Great Reset. Like, what were they thinking? But we should absolutely use global event crises like this as potential grounds for big changes in society. However, since I am a eurofederalist channel, I think I should cover his eurofederalist opinions, because Klaus Schwab is in practice a European federalist. He does not use that word directly, like most politicians in Europe don't, because he is too smart for that, just like Macron, who deep down in his heart wants a European federation, but knows that nationalism dominates politics and mentality today, so you cannot say the quiet part out loud. But if you read in between the lines of what he's actually covering, clearly proposing a real federation. And his 2012 book, called The Re-Emergence of Europe, lays it out directly. He argues that the euro cannot survive without a central authority to manage it. And this is something I've said so many times. The reason the euro has not become the global reserve currency, the reason that Europe has these fiscal problems with Greece and why we're so inefficient, is because we have not truly committed to a federation. The negative consequences of not fully committing to a united system is insane. And yet, despite this, it's still worth it. This should lay out extremely clearly how positive it will be if we fully commit. Most recently, the WEF has pushed what they call a 28th regime, essentially an EU incorporated business structure that lets companies operate under one single set of European rules instead of navigating 27 different national legal systems. And I think this is a very good idea, and it's absolutely fascinating, since, you know, technically Europe is one market, one Schengen area, and we're united in many economic ways, but in practice we are not, because the bureaucratic legislation differences from country to country make it that it's impossible or almost impossible to scale your business continent-wide. This is why all small startups that want to be successful move to America. But if we created this virtual fake 28th country that would only exist on paper, where companies could make their legislation according to that fake EU country, then scaling around the entire continent would be much easier. But at the end of the day, this is just another way to not fully commit to a true union, and is simply yet more bureaucracy. It's sad, the weird bureaucratic things we have to do to avoid losing national power. I'm so exhausted by all the things people are trying to come up with, instead of just looking at the fact that we need one country. But I want one that comes through democratic mandates. Democracy is non-negotiable and it is sacred. So we need referendums, elected constitutional assemblies, and not some kind of quietly assembled elitist group through the WEF white papers by people nobody voted for. So the WEF is moving Europe in the proper direction. They overall, I believe, are a net positive, but they are inherently undemocratic, so that's a real criticism. And they also act like Taylor Swift or Billie Eilish with their virtue signaling, since every year roughly 1,000 private jets fly into airports around Davos so that the world elites can attend panels about climate change. And you know, Davos has a perfectly good European train station just 27 kilometers from the airport. And still, every year, the elites lecturing the world about sustainability arrive in the most carbon-intensive mode of transport that simply exists. But I personally think that this argument is kind of weak, because if you were a billionaire, you listening right now, you would also fly in private jets, because when you have infinite money, time is extremely valuable, and therefore private jets are just an inevitable part of late-stage capitalism, top 0.01%. It's worth pointing out that all the drama around the World Economic Forum is 90% just memes and maybe 10% actual conspiracies and worries. The conspiracy theories are the symptom, but the disease is incompetent institutions and tribalism. The WEF did not create this problem, and it is kind of trying to solve it, but it is in fact a very visible part of it. So visible, in fact, that it kind of became the face of modern elitism. Because globalism is genuinely disorienting for many. The world feels like it is being run by people who you did not actually vote for and who you cannot remove. Companies and capitalism rules the world, and when somebody offers you a theory that names the cause of this feeling you have in the back of your head, and it even gives you a creepy face, Klaus Schwab, George Soros and the WEF, the Jews, whoever, there is a psychological relief to our monkey brains that it's so easy and simple to just put a face to the problem. However, in my opinion, the world is not controlled by a secret cabal. It is being shaped by a large number of powerful actors, governments, corporations, internal institutions, each pursuing their own interests in a chaotic, competitive, non-coordinated way that produces outcomes nobody fully designed or intended for. There is no long-term agenda, there are just a lot of powerful people making decisions that affect everyone else, with limited mechanisms for everyone else to participate or respond. I believe in global cooperation, regulated capitalism, global governance of AI, and a European federation. And these are all things that Schwab also believes. Even if he doesn't mention that last part very directly, but it's very clear that that is part of his agenda. And at the end of the day, Klaus Schwab is just an old German conference organizer who somehow became a huge meme. And also he spent 50 years advocating for European political structure that looks suspiciously like a federation, and that's why I kinda like Schwab. And also while writing this script, I somehow went down a rabbit hole about Scientology. I'm also making a video on that. And in Scientology, the main cosmic being god thing is the ancient leader called Xenu. And I'm bringing this up because Klaus Schwab wears this weird costume that suspiciously looks extremely like Xenu depicted in modern culture. So maybe Schwab is secretly the leader of Scientology. But anyways, I know this video will get a bunch of hate and criticism. I tried being fair while also being honest about my opinion on the situation. But please do leave a comment on your opinion, tell me why I'm wrong, why the New World Order is actually secretly controlled by the Jews. I'll try to respond to every single comment like I do on this channel, but if you want a deeper conversation, then join the Polish Dane Discord in the description, and please remember that you don't have to agree with me. I watch a bunch of YouTubers I disagree with, from Hasanabi to Asmongold, because engaging with other opinions is healthy for the individual and democracy as a whole. And if you enjoy content exploring topics like this, maybe consider subscribing. You can always unsubscribe later, so it doesn't really matter. Also, shout out to my 2 members of Atlantis and the Baron. Consider becoming a member if you want some benefits and to support me. And remember to always be a good goy. And as always, farewell, żegnam, and goodbye.